On this vote, the yeas are 230, the nays are 196. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Tonight, a historic shift is occurring on Capitol Hill. For years, political observers have wondered what it would take for the institutional Republican Party to openly defy the White House. And this week, we finally found the answer. From a landmark vote on healthcare subsidies to a rare bipartisan rebuke of military action in Venezuela, the structural supports of this presidency are showing unprecedented cracks. As approval ratings hit historic lows and internal party factions deepen, we look at the converging crises creating the most precarious moment for Donald Trump since his return to power. Let's play this clip.
And we've done great everywhere. It's amazing. It's an amazing phenomena that on 2 or 3 occasions, I don't know, it depends on how far you want to go back, but if you go back a long way, the sitting president, whether it's Democrat or Republican, always loses the midterm, even if they've done well, almost always. And, you know, you'd think it would be like a 50-50 deal. Even if the president's done a great job, I think we've done a great job. We've done maybe the best job ever in the first year. But they always seem to lose the midterm. There's something down deep psychologically with the voters that they want maybe a check or something. I don't know what it is exactly.
It's very important for the NATO alliance to know that we have their back because they've had ours. We're the only country that has benefited from the Article 5 commitment in Afghanistan, where treasure and lives have been lost by our allies. We owe them respect, and we need to make it very clear that our strength and our ability to project power, to stand off against Putin, to stand off Russia, stand off China, Iran, it all rests on this exquisite capability that we have under NATO.
For nearly a decade, the defining feature of American politics has been the seemingly unbreakable bond between Donald Trump and the Republican Party in Congress. We have seen this president survive scandals, legal challenges, and internal revolts that would have ended almost any other political career. But as we move into the early days of 2026, a growing chorus of analysts and even some of the president's closest allies are beginning to argue that the rules of political gravity have finally started to apply. The events of this week suggest that the iron grip often attributed to the president over his party is slipping in ways that are not just symbolic, but structurally damaging to his ability to govern. The most visible sign of this shift occurred on the floor of the House of Representatives. In a move that caught both party leadership and the White House off guard, the House passed legislation to extend healthcare subsidies for millions of Americans who rely on the Affordable Care Act. This was not a standard vote. It was the result of a discharge petition, a rare parliamentary maneuver that allows rank-and-file members to bypass the House Speaker and force a vote on the floor. In this case, 4 Republicans, Brian Fitzpatrick, Robert Bresnahan, Ryan McKenzie, and Mike Lawler, joined Democrats to reach the 218-vote threshold needed to take control of the agenda away from Speaker Mike Johnson. When the final tally was taken, 17 Republicans had joined essentially every Democrat to pass the bill, 230 to 196. This vote was a direct rejection of the administration's policy. President Trump has pushed for a different approach to health care, suggesting that the government should send money directly to Americans for health savings accounts rather than subsidizing insurance premiums. However, with millions of Americans facing the prospect of their insurance premiums doubling, many Republicans in swing districts decided that the political risk of inaction was higher than the risk of defying the president. Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries noted that the affordability crisis is a very real issue for voters, directly contrasting his remarks with the president's previous claims. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that this extension would increase the number of insured Americans by 3 million by the year 2027, highlighting the high stakes of this legislative battle. But the revolt was not limited to the House. In the Senate, the administration faced a rare bipartisan rebuke over its escalating military presence in Venezuela, following a surprise overnight raid by special forces that resulted in the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and his wife, Celia Flores. The White House suggested that the United States would indefinitely run the country. This declaration immediately raised constitutional alarms. 5 Republican senators, Susan Collins, Josh Hawley, Lisa Murkowski, Rand Paul, and Todd Young, crossed party lines to advance a war powers resolution aimed at reining in the president's authority to conduct further military operations in the region without a clear mandate from Congress. The reaction from the White House was swift and characteristically sharp. On social media, the president stated that these 5 senators should never be elected to office again, even as some, like Susan Collins, face difficult re-election campaigns where their party's control of the Senate hangs in the balance. Senator Young of Indiana defended his vote by stating that while he supported the ouster of Maduro, he was not prepared to commit American troops to a mission of running or stabilizing the country without a full debate and authorization in Congress. Senator Collins echoed this sentiment, noting her disagreement with the possibility of boots on the ground and a sustained engagement. These legislative defeats are occurring against a backdrop of historic unpopularity. A January composite of national surveys shows the president's approval rating has plunged to minus 24%. To put that in perspective, this is a low point surpassed only by Richard Nixon during the height of the Watergate scandal at a comparable point in his term. Perhaps more concerning for the administration is where this support is eroding. New data shows notable declines among suburban voters and Hispanic men, the very groups that were instrumental in the 2024 election. Analysts point to several compounding factors, but the economy remains the most significant liability. Despite promises to lower consumer costs, inflation has ticked upward, unemployment has risen, and consumer confidence has fallen for 3 consecutive months as grocery and housing costs continue to climb. Inside the Republican Party, these pressures are exposing a deep diploma divide that has been intensifying over several election cycles. Research from the University of Denver highlights how educational attainment has become one of the strongest predictors of political behavior within the GOP. While the president remains popular with voters who have lower levels of educational attainment, college-educated Republicans are increasingly seeking alternatives. This group was the last to accept the president's brand of populist nationalism and is often the first to support traditional GOP values like international cooperation and fiscal restraint. This internal factionalism was evident in the 2024 primaries, where candidates like Nikki Haley drew significant support from degree-holding voters in cities and suburbs. The administration's personnel challenges have only added to the sense of a presidency under strain. The White House has been described by some GOP aides as chaotic even by Trump-era standards. In recent weeks, 2 senior officials resigned amid investigations, and congressional committees have opened inquiries into the handling of classified information and procurement contracts. This atmosphere has made it increasingly difficult to fill key vacancies, as potential nominees fear the reputational damage of joining an administration struggling to regain control of its own narrative. The president's own communication style has also become a point of contention among his allies. In December, one 5-hour span saw more than 160 messages posted on Truth Social, an episode described by some columnists as an unhinged mix of high and low. Advisors privately acknowledged that these unpredictable outbursts, which often contradict official administration statements, are complicating efforts to reassure donors, foreign partners, and lawmakers. Even as the president claims to have had maybe the best job ever in the first year, he has recently conceded in interviews that the sitting president almost always loses the midterm elections, suggesting a growing awareness of the political headwinds he faces. The tension between the executive branch and Congress was perhaps most clearly illustrated in the battle over a bipartisan water project in Colorado. The president vetoed a bill that would have brought clean drinking water to 50,000 people in rural southeastern Colorado, citing the need for fiscal responsibility. However, the bill actually cost the federal government virtually nothing, as it merely extended a repayment period for local water users. Colorado lawmakers from both parties, including Republican Representative Lauren Boebert, expressed disappointment and surprise at the veto. Some members of the delegation argued that the move was not about policy, but was instead a form of political retaliation for Colorado's refusal to release an election denier from state prison after a presidential pardon. While the House ultimately failed to override the veto, 35 Republicans voted to do so, demonstrating a willingness to stand for their constituents even in the face of a presidential rebuke. As we look toward the 2026 midterm elections, these developments suggest a fundamental change in the political landscape. The institutional Republican Party appears increasingly willing to challenge the president on issues ranging from war powers to healthcare and local infrastructure. Influential conservative donors have signaled they may withhold funding until the administration stabilizes. While the president has repeatedly rebounded from fatal political moments in the past, strategists note that this is the first time the structural supports of his movement, economic optimism, party unity, and the aura of invincibility are all weakening at once. The question now is whether the administration can pivot and find a way to work with a Congress that is clearly eager to reassert its own authority under Article 1 of the Constitution. Some Republicans, like Representative Brian Fitzpatrick, have been vocal about the need for Congress to defend and protect the institution as an equal branch of government. Others, like Representative Don Bacon, have expressed frustration that the administration has made little effort to inform Congress of its mission or intentions in places like Venezuela. The capture of Nicolas Maduro, while a dramatic military success, has left the United States with a complicated geopolitical situation, with the White House stating that the U.S. will run the country and maintain a partnership with its oil industry. International concerns about U.S. overreach have intensified. Allies in the region, such as Colombia and Chile, have condemned the raid as a violation of sovereignty. Meanwhile, domestic critics argue that the focus on foreign regime change is a distraction from the kitchen table issues that voters care most about, specifically the high cost of living and the stability of the healthcare system. The convergence of economic strain, administrative dysfunction, party fractures, and personal volatility has created a moment that even the president's allies acknowledge is unprecedented. Whether this marks the beginning of the end for his political dominance remains to be seen. However, for the first time in years, the forces aligned against the administration may be too numerous and too deeply rooted to simply be outrun. The coming months will be a test of whether the Republican majorities in Congress are prepared to reclaim their authority, or if they will remain, as some critics have suggested, willing partners in their own subordination. With more discharge petitions on the horizon and a Supreme Court that may soon rule on the legality of emergency tariffs, the balance of power in Washington is shifting. The people elect leaders to serve them. Yet, as some observers have noted, Too many leaders seem to have spent the last year working for interests other than those of the citizens who trusted them. The money trail, the internal party divisions, and the escalating international tensions all point to a singular reality. The American political system is undergoing a profound stress test, and the outcome will define the future of our democracy for generations to come. As this precarious stretch of the presidency continues, the American people are left as spectators to a struggle for the very heart of their government. The principles of popular sovereignty, equality, and the rule of law are at stake as billionaire influence and executive overreach collide with a newly emboldened Congress. It is a story that is still being written, but the chapters unfolding this week on Capitol Hill may be remembered as the most consequential of this era. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the shifting power dynamics of the 2026 political landscape. The resilience of democratic institutions depends on the active participation and informed awareness of every citizen. If you found this factual analysis helpful, please consider subscribing for more long-form storytelling on the issues that matter most to our country. We will continue to monitor these developments closely as they happen. Until next time, stay informed and stay engaged.